This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl Miriam Joire.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joire, and today is Tuesday, June 6, 2017. We're just fresh from the Apple event. And my guest today is Avram Piltch. Am I saying that properly, Avram?
Yes, definitely.
Yes, I win. So, Avram writes for Tom's Guide and Laptop Mag, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And, you know, I see Avram at a lot of trade shows, and we've been friends for a long time. And, you know, this is primarily a phone show, but at the same time, it's a mobile show. And you know I love laptops, and you know I love tablets, and you know I love mobile computers. I mean, I bought an OQO back in the day. That's how much I love mobile computers. So Avram is the guy to have on the show for that. So we were both at Computex last week. How did that go for you?
Excellent. It was the best Computex that we've had, really. I mean, just a lot of exciting announcements and just a great show overall. This is, I think, the 8th or 9th time that I've done it.
It's a good show, isn't it? It's fun.
My favorite.
And
but mainly because you're there. But really, I mean, a lot of great people come, and it's just, I love Taiwan, and I love just seeing where, the big vendors from Taiwan come and put on a great show like ASUS does. So it's a fun show. I really enjoy it.
No, I agree with you. I think it really helps that it's in Taipei. Taiwan is a beautiful place, and Taipei is a particularly great city. And some big companies based out of in the PC world, like ASUS and Acer. Of course, HTC, which didn't really do anything this year. But before we get into Computex, Avram, there's this big elephant in the room right now with a big Apple logo on it. What are your thoughts on yesterday's adventure?
Adventure.
That's a good way, right, to describe it?
Yes. It was one more thing to keep track of. I think it was good that Apple finally gave some love to the iMac. And refresh that, and that they did a processor bump on the rest of their MacBooks. But obviously, they haven't addressed a lot of the issues that people had with the MacBooks, which are among the reasons why Apple, in our Laptop Mag Best and Worst Brands, which we've been doing for 8 or 9 years now, Apple, for the first time, came in 6th, not 1st, because of the quality of the MacBooks. So yes, the MacBook Pros and the 12-inch MacBook got a bump up to Kaby Lake processors, which means that they're only like 7 months behind most PCs, but they still haven't addressed the issues that people were really concerned about, such as lack of important ports and the fact that the touch bar is really no substitute for having a touch screen and doesn't really do enough to justify the price. So it was nice that they made an effort there to finally get some processor parity, but it doesn't really do much to change the trajectory. And certainly they did nothing to really change the trajectory of the MacBook Air, which, not to say that we were expecting a big Air announcement, but it's just like the thing that won't die. It's sort of like Michael Myers at the end of Halloween. They won't kill it, but they just keep changing it just a little bit. So they gave it like a 200 megahertz faster chip or something.
So they actually upgraded the guts of the Air? I missed that.
Yes, but they didn't show it on screen. They said, we're giving it a slight processor bump.
Wow.
So it's still, although they never disclose what gen the processor is on it, we believe it's still a Haswell Broadwell processor. I think it's still 5th gen core.
Got it.
But it's now gone from like 1.5 to 1.8 gigahertz. So really, we'll really see the difference.
How bizarre that they would bother, right? Like, wow. I mean, look, I'm a huge Mac person, right? Like, I'm not an Apple fangirl, but I really do like my Macs. And I have to say that this last set of MacBooks, well, not the ones announced yesterday because they're just refreshes, have kind of left me cold. And I think, look, I have a MacBook 12-inch as my travel computer, so I'm a little masochistic, right? But at the same time, I love its size and weight. And of course, mine is the very first generation, so it's very much outpaced by what they just announced. I bet you the Kaby Lake 7th Gen Core i7 version of that machine runs circles around mine, and I might upgrade just for that. But what vexes me the most is that there is no 13-inch non-touch bar MacBook Pro with 4 Thunderbolt 3 USB-C ports yet.
I think it should vex everybody that there's no. I believe there's still an old 15-inch MacBook Pro available somewhere that has regular USB ports.
Right.
But for everybody else, and by the way, they killed the $1299 MacBook Pro that was a little older that had all the legacy ports.
The 13-inch one? Yeah. Yeah, I know.
So they killed that. So people who are creative professionals, which is, I think, your primary audience for the MacBook Pro, those folks who have all of their, their external hard drives, their flash drives, their all kinds of their peripherals and docks that they've been using for years, well, they're going to have to live the dongle lifestyle or whatever. They're going to have a bag full of dongles with them for the foreseeable future. And I think a lot of people don't like that and don't want that.
Honestly, that's not my issue. I'm on board 100% on USB-C and on the dongles because I think it's the future and there's going to be this intermediate phase where we have dongles. And I've been living the dongle life since the original MacBook Air, which had the little trap door that opened with a single USB type A port. So I'm fine with that. My concern is that, like you said, and actually I disagree with you somewhat, but I do agree with you in general, that the touch bar is stupid. And this is coming from a Mac user. Now, a lot of people said to me, and other big Mac users said to me, Miriam, if you use it, you might change your mind. And I'm like, no, I won't change my mind because, like I agree with you, it's useless and it's a poor substitute for a touchscreen. But I also think it's delusional to think that Apple will put a touchscreen on their Macs. So that's kind of why I disagree with you that I don't think that's ever going to happen. So in that sense, I say don't even bother with a touch bar. Just give me a Mac with a keyboard, a good Mac. And I think there's nothing inherently wrong with the 13 and 15-inch MacBook Pros that we have now other than the touch bar because that's what I want. I want a 13-inch, fully loaded MacBook Pro without a touch bar. I want the 4 Thunderbolt USB 3 ports. USB-C. I want spec'd out to the 9s, and I can't get that. I have to, if I want to do that, get a touch bar. And to me, without a physical escape, I could potentially live with the other keys being virtual. The other thing that I really thought they would do is this kind of revised version of the touch bar Max was put haptic feedback on the touch bar. So in the same way as I have it in the trackpad, when you tap on the touch bar buttons, you feel like you're clicking something, right? The fact that they have that technology and haven't put that in the touch bar from day one, or at least now the revised ones, I don't get it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that Apple is kind of anti-haptic feedback. You don't get it on the iPad or the iPhone. So, and you, by the way, didn't get it on Windows Phone. It seems like
no, you
only
get it
Android.
On the iPhone.
Do you get it?
You've gotten it on the iPhone since the 6S and the 6S Plus. It's been on the full screen. It's called. That's where it started. And then on the 12-inch MacBook, they were the first to implement haptics on the trackpad. The trackpad doesn't actually physically click on the 12-inch MacBook that I have. And
yeah, all the Force Pad.
And all the Force Touch trackpads since then have been, all the new MacBook Pros have that trackpad. So they absolutely use haptics. And that's my exact point. They have the technology, yet they didn't put it in the touch bar.
Yeah, they should have. I mean, it certainly makes touch typing impossible. But it's still impossible because there's no delineation between the keys. So even if you had haptics, you would have a hard time feeling your way.
But you see, that's okay with me because the only key I really need up there that with that clear delineation is the escape key, and then of course the fingerprint reader I think is brilliant. It's great, but the middle buttons could be a touch bar if they had at least just haptic feedback that I've clicked on them. I could potentially live with that, but the way it is now is flawed. And as a Mac person, it's really painful for me because I'm usually on board with most things Apple does to the Mac. But, and speaking of which, I'm very excited to see what they're doing with the iMac, especially the iMac Pro. But let's talk about that in a second. Since we're in the middle of laptops, let's talk about this. Do you think, you're an expert, I have the original MacBook 12-inch from 2 years ago that has a stupid Core M3 or whatever it is in there. Slow. Should I upgrade to a 12-inch MacBook with Kaby Lake?
No, you should not, because the Kaby Lake is also going to have a similar level of performance. I mean, it's going to be a bump for sure, but don't be fooled. It's going to use a Kaby Lake Y series processor. So the Y series processor is Core M. They just rebranded Core M as Y series.
It's all a big ruse to get me to buy a new MacBook. But I probably would be better off buying a 13-inch non-touch bar MacBook Pro then. The problem is that I want 4 ports. Because if I'm going to go for a bigger laptop and lose some thinness and weight advantages, I'm going to want to have more ports than 2.
But you said you live the dongle lifestyle.
I do live the dongle lifestyle, but if I'm going to buy a bigger computer, I want more ports. That's all. I guess what I'm saying is I'm vexed that only the touch bar versions have 4 ports.
Yeah, that is a shame. They should give you more ports. But I still think they should give you other things that creative professionals need. I understand, it's not that hard to carry dongles with you, but it's always at the worst possible time that you don't have the dongle that you need. So I'm very thankful every time I whip out my PC notebook and I have an SD card reader on there, because when I'm at a trade show covering it and I need to pop in a memory card to take the picture and upload it, or take a video and upload it, it's a lot easier than trying to fish through my bag and see, did I forget my dongle?
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that. I don't forget the dongles that was in my bag. But the other thing is I actually use the dongles with my Android phone since they're USB-C. Everything works, I use the dongle on my to import photos directly into my phone and upload them directly to my my various CMSs directly from the phone sometimes. So it's nice. What I'm saying to you is the dongle life has also brought with it a whole bunch of cool inherent advantages, like the fact that I have dongles to get my phone on Ethernet, for example. So I actually was at Google I/O with my Galaxy S8 in the press pit taking videos, live YouTube videos of what was happening on stage, and I was able to do it without worrying about bandwidth issues on the really crowded Wi-Fi, because they provided us with wired connections in the press pit. So I plugged the wired connection into a USB Type-C Ethernet dongle into the back of my Galaxy S8, into the bottom USB Type-C port, and boom, I had 300 megabits up and down symmetric to play with for uploading videos in real time. It was fantastic. So, there are some things to be said about the dongles. And yeah. Are you still there?
Yeah. I'm just thinking about what dongles would you need to carry with you.
So I only carry 2. I have a dongle that lets me charge while the dongle is connected to my MacBook. It's 12-inch. So it's a pass-through for power delivery USB Type-C. And it has 3 USB-A 3.0 ports. So I can plug 3 regular devices like a thumb drive, whatever. And it has a SDXC full-size card reader. The only thing it's missing is an Ethernet port. And for that, I use Apple's very own USB 2.0 to Ethernet dongle that I've had since my actual original MacBook Air in 2007, 8, whenever it is I bought it, 2008. So that's how old that dongle is, and it works just fine. But it's only 2 dongles, so that I can live with 2 dongles. Not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. You just have to remember to take them. And
They just
I
live
will
in my
always-
bag. That's it.
Yeah.
And my bag is always with me. So, but yeah, look, I hear you, and I think that's one of the things about the PC ecosystem versus the Mac ecosystem that is so amazing. And before we segue to the PC ecosystem and talk about some of the amazing machines we saw at Computex, what else struck you about Apple's Apple announcement? I know I want to talk about the iMac Pro, and maybe the bumps to the iMacs, but there was an iPad.
the iPad Pro 10.5.
So what do you think of that? You reviewed tablets, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that tablet is going to really be a nice sweet spot for people who think maybe the 9.7 was too small, that the 12-inch was too big. So it's kind of in the Goldilocks zone for tablet, but I still don't think that Apple's iPad Pros can replace someone's laptop. I mean, yes, you can get the keyboard for them, and that helps. But realistically speaking, it's not something that will balance well on your lap. The iOS operating system is a mobile operating system. It's not like taking a Surface Pro with full Windows 10 and trying to balance that on your lap and use it as your main PC. So I think it's good for creative professionals. I think it's good for people who draw. I think it's good for note taking. But I don't see a lot of people using that as their primary document editing PC.
But what do you think of iOS 11? It sounds like they're remedying some of these things with a file system, drag and drop between apps, a multitasking thing that resembles what we saw with Windows 10. I should say since Windows 8, actually. What did you see that? I mean, to me, that goes hand in hand with that new iPad, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's definitely a huge improvement, especially the files, where they're finally giving you access to the file system, something that Android's had since like 2009. But, it's good that you finally have it. That's something that professional operating systems need.
Right.
Interesting question, which I think the answer is probably no, is what happens if you try to attach a USB device to your Lightning port? Is it going to show up as a drive that you can actually browse?
It'd be interesting to find out, right?
My guess is probably not, but that's the behavior that should happen. I mean, that's what happens on Android devices. And there are Lightning to USB drives out there that you need special apps to load. So really, again, if they want this to be a computer replacement, they need to take things like that seriously and to take the multitasking more seriously. And it's nice that they're doing it, but it's hard to imagine somebody taking that and treating it as their main computer.
I know some people, and I know some people who are in the tech blogging, tech journalism sphere. Do you know, for example, that Harry McCracken?
Yes, I was going to say,
iPads
except him.
Exclusively, except Harry. You think it's just Harry?
No, I'm sure it's not just him. He's definitely on the cutting edge, and I applaud him. If it works for him, that's great. It really depends on, I guess, how comfortable you are using the Bluetooth keyboard. Is it lappable, or are you using it on your lap? Are you writing on it with a pencil? I mean, certainly that's very convenient if you can do it. It's hard for me to imagine sitting there and like writing a 2,000 word article on one of those things, but I guess anything's possible. I mean, I wrote a master's thesis in WordPerfect 5.1. There were no multi windows there. So
well, I used to use WordPerfect 5.1 too, so I know your pain. I'll be honest with you though. I think that just for the writing alone, I think it's actually probably okay to use an iPad. That would probably be my first kind of like, yeah, I can do that kind of moment. But I use Chromebooks extensively for work, and obviously there's a lot of stuff I can't do on Chromebooks, and I just go back to my Macs. But writing should work just fine on a tablet with a keyboard once you have a dedicated like Logitech keyboard or something. But you're right, it's never going to be quite the same as a Surface, right? I mean, and that's one of the things. Well, I shouldn't say a Surface because I actually think that I'm not a big fan of the Surface format in the sense of like the kind of pseudo cardboardish keyboard.
Yeah, that's a real challenge to use on your lap.
I much prefer like the convertibles and the ones that, like flip yoga style.
Yeah, I prefer that too.
Yeah, those I think are perfectly good replacements. But there are some cases for iPad and keyboards for iPad that let you turn it into a laptop. And for those, I think I could see myself writing an entire article on an iPad like iOS 11 with this new multitasking. But the verdict's still out. I get frustrated very easily when I try to use a tablet as my writing instrument. Because I always find something is missing in terms of key shortcuts, but they're addressing that slowly. Android didn't use support a lot of the key shortcuts in the old days, and now it does on tablets. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I'm just excited to see that they're persisting with the iPad, despite the fact that it is no longer a bestseller. And they're addressing the needs of their customers, which is a very smart thing for a business to do,
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think the iPad Pro 10.5 is going to be a good one, but I don't think it's going to change the market.
No. What about the iMacs? I mean, obviously some spec bumps on the existing iMacs, and that's okay, to be expected. Looks like they added USB Type-C and Thunderbolt 3 to them, which is cool. But that iMac Pro has me intrigued. The price is eyebrow-raising, to say the least. What is your take on that?
Yeah, it's expensive, and that's what you expect from Apple as a premium product. I mean, that's why they're basically killing the MacBook Air, right? I mean, there's no notebook now under $12.99, so they want to be a premium brand. They don't want to be Dell.
Right.
So that's fine. It's good to see them take it to the high end and offer something with that kind of screen and with those kind of specs. I mean, I guess you could say that's their answer to the Surface Studio, or probably a better answer because, I mean, it's the specs are much better. Right.
I mean, those specs are impressive for something that thin and small. In the sense that they're going Xeon, right? They're going with these new... Is that the new Core i9 that was announced at Computex, actually?
No, I don't think so, because the Core i9 is not a Xeon. So,
okay.
And Core i9's not going to really be out for a while. I don't think we're actually going to see it till like August, September time.
But remember, this thing's not coming out till December.
So there's room there for them to do it.
And they talked about 18 cores.
Oh, well, then it might be i9, because i9 gives you 18 cores.
And I mean, they might say Xeon for the other ones, but there's a bunch of configs. There's an 8-core and a 10-core and an 18-core.
That's the one to buy if your company is paying.
I like your thinking, Avram. That's good. So, yeah, I mean, it also has pretty massive, crazy video card support. And it's interesting how they mention VR. Like, they mentioned the iMacs as a platform for VR creation, which is the first time we've really actually seen Apple kind of talk about VR in a major way at a keynote. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, they're like 2 years behind, 3 years behind everyone.
They're realizing there's money to be made here.
The thing that actually intrigued me the most, that was kind of a throwaway announcement, was that they're selling a developer kit, which is an external graphics card.
Yeah.
That means that Apple is throwing its weight behind external graphics cards. Now, we saw at Computex, which I know we'll get to in full later, a whole bunch of companies now coming out with Thunderbolt 3 graphics docks.
Why don't we segue right now? Because, I mean, I think other than speaking about the HomePod, which is the Sonos / Amazon Echo type device from Apple, there's not much left to talk about, and I really know nothing about it other than I'm sure it sounds awesome, and Siri is still as useless as ever.
And it costs twice as much.
There you go. So how about we talk about these wonderful computers we saw at Computex?
So many. What impressed you the most?
Look, I'm a big sucker for the ultra thin, ultra lights, right? So for me, the ZenBook Flip S has really got my attention. because I like convertibles or especially the yoga style. You guys have all this vocabulary for that. Avram, please correct me.
No, convertible is probably the right word. I mean,
is it?
I don't think the industry is really there's a 2-in-1. It's a convertible. I like to call them bend back 2-in-1s, but that's just me.
There you go. So you heard it here. Expert has said bend back 2-in-1.
I think that's just me, though. I'm just trying to coin it.
Oh, come on. You can invent new words, Avram. You've been around the business long enough.
Yes, it bends back. And I agree with you that those are the best kind because they're laptops first and tablets second. Because let's be honest, when you're buying something like that, you're buying it to be like your primary computer. And when you want it in tablet mode, it's for usually a secondary purpose, or you use it for in one of those other awkward modes like the tent mode or the stand mode, so you can prop it up and watch a video or show someone a PowerPoint or something like that. So, the ZenBook Flip S was pretty impressive, although it's really just a continuation of the ZenBook 3 that we saw in September. It's the same design, all the same things. It's just now it's a 2-in-1.
But it's sexy.
It is nice. I mean, I like the blue. I think I give
blue and gold.
I give Asus a lot of credit for actually going there with color because unfortunately there just are not a lot of laptops that are primary colors anymore. Yeah. I would like to see a 20th anniversary iBook, but I'm sure no one will go there because it was a very controversial design at the time. But that was the last time. It. Me too. That was the last time. Give me my Bondi blue iBook, or my Blueberry. So that was the last time when you really saw a lot of high end stuff coming in primary colors. Now it's usually limited to the really cheap Dell 11-3000 that costs $200. But so I really appreciate that Asus has gone there. And interestingly, someone from Asus told me that on the prior model, the ZenBook 3, the blue and gold way outsold the silver model.
Wow.
By orders of magnitude. And for good reason, because I'm really sick of silver and gold as design colors. I mean, we've been there, we've done that. Rose gold is just another color of gold. Give us some actual, bright colors. So the ZenBook Flip S is a fantastic design, but I'm really impressed with two new technologies that made their debut this year. We're going to be seeing products based on them for a long time to come. First, there was NVIDIA's new technology, which NVIDIA's new technology for fitting higher end graphics cards into thinner and thinner laptops.
Right, I saw that. What was it called? There was an interesting name.
It was, every time I say it, I forget it, and I should. It was, I think...
something Q.
Yeah, WebQ. No, I'm getting that wrong. Anyway, I should know this. I said it earlier today. It'll come to me after we're off. But
don't worry, it's okay.
The new NVIDIA technology really allows you to do things like put a high-end GTX 1080 graphics card into a relatively thin and light gaming notebook.
Yeah, and we saw a few.
There were about 5 of them, the best of which was the Asus ROG Zephyrus, which is an absolutely gorgeous notebook, not just because it's a little thin for how powerful it is, but because it's got this really interesting keyboard design on it, and Asus really pushed the envelope. Now, you do trade off, right? By doing this, what happens is that you end up with a slightly downclocked processor. So It's quiet. The fans can't go too loud. The Q is for quiet. It's quiet, and it's a bit thinner, but you're not getting pedal to the metal performance. So that's the trade-off. And when I spoke to someone from Alienware about this, they said, we are never going to make something that thin and light.
Interesting. Why would they say that?
Well, they feel that performance is the absolute most important thing. And so while they're going to take advantage of the technology so they can fit, say, a 1080 card into the existing Alienware 15 chassis, which couldn't fit it before, they're not going to compete with others to get it to make the thinnest possible gaming system. They don't want to do it.
Right, that makes sense. What's the other thing you saw?
So I really like the initiative for putting Windows 10 on Qualcomm-based laptops.
So we talked about that in my last podcast, and I'm 100% on board as well. So what's your take on that?
Well, what I really want to see is how good the connected standby is, which my understanding is it may or may not be that much better than what you have today with Intel chips. You're just getting better battery life. What I really want to see is the classic case that I'm sure you've had a million times. You shoot a video, you shoot a lot of photos, you're uploading stuff, you're running between events, you go and you close the lid of your notebook because you got into a cab or something, and then your upload stops or your download stops.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen on your phone. If
Right.
you're uploading to YouTube on your phone or to Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever, your phone goes to sleep, but it's still uploading and downloading. Well, that's the real promise here, is that even though Windows is asleep, the file transfers will continue. Now, what we don't know is to what extent that's going to work programmatically. Will a browser like Chrome, if you're uploading something in the browser, continue to upload when your computer goes to sleep? I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really been a serious problem for people who are doing work. Now, talking to Qualcomm, they said their initial batch of always connected laptops is not going to be targeted at business. It's going to be targeted at consumers. So maybe they're thinking more along the lines of make sure you get your Facebook updates as soon as you open up your lid. But
Right.
I hope that they really look at this more as a productivity play, because everybody, whether you're working for a corporation or not, everyone's trying to be productive. Everyone's in business for one way or another, trying to get things done. So I think the connected standby is a big deal. I think if they do something that really increases the battery life dramatically of laptops, that's a big deal. But on the other hand, we're seeing Ultrabooks that, if they're created with a good battery, can get 10, 12 hours of battery life. So, I do think battery life is an issue across the industry. We really want to be seeing things that you can run pedal to the metal with full brightness and get, 15 hours of battery life. There's very few laptops out there like that, and most of them are a little bit bigger. But still, I think the biggest message here is always connected. What I do think is going to be a tough sell for them is not necessarily whether the performance is good or not. I think the performance is good enough, and the designs and battery life and connectivity are good. They can get by with that. I think the real issue is it really seems like they're betting the farm on people buying LTE, a special LTE plan just for their laptops. And so far, that's been kind of a non-starter for people.
Yeah.
I mean, that means that they're paying another at least $10 a month on a family plan to connect another device that they may not need to have on 4G all the time.
Well, they seem to think that people would have the option of buying this bite size as well. So we'll see how it pans out. But you know what? You can always have it in there and not use it. And I still think with Snapdragon 835, and I had the demo. I posted a video about the demo on Mobile Geeks because I was so impressed with the demo. The emulation was flawless and performance was really good. So I actually think we're going to see huge gains in battery life on these Snapdragon 835 based Windows 10 devices compared to what we're used to on Intel. And that alone, to me, will sell the laptops, because sure, the connected stuff is nice, especially the background, update, the connected standby. But I think for me, it's the LTE. Of course, I will probably pay more for it because I love it. But even if you don't get that, I mean, it's going to be, I think we're going to see some super light, super thin battery champs come out of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure hoping for it. I mean, right now, we do very extensive battery testing at Laptop Mag. So, like the longest lasting laptop right now is the Lenovo ThinkPad T470, and that lasts just over 17 hours on a charge with an extended battery, but that thing weighs about 4 pounds.
Wow.
With that extended battery. Now, I'm more than willing to carry the 4 pounds so that I won't run out of juice. But if you were given the opportunity to carry something that was 2 pounds and lasted 17 hours on a charge, that really wouldn't be bad. Now, to be fair, there are some things that are fairly light that get you almost there. For example, the X1 Carbon right now gets about 12 hours, and that thing weighs about 2.5 pounds. So that's pretty impressive as far as battery life per weight. But that's not running at full brightness and really doing a ton. Yeah. So, what would I love? I would love it to run for my entire flight to Taiwan and still have some juice for the airport.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to get there with this Snapdragon 835 on Windows 10 combo. I think it's coming. That's why I'm super excited. I want to kind of maybe wrap up Computex and talk phones a little bit because, I know my listeners love talking about phones, and I'd love to have your take as a, tech-savvy early adopter, tech journalist, but not necessarily a phone person, on the state of phones in the world. But before we do that, I just want to make sure that there's nothing else about Computex. I mean, we could go on about Computex for a while. We talked about it in the podcast last week with Nicole and Kevin of Crackberry. But let me know.
Well, the one thing I just want to mention is it looks like more companies are taking external graphics amps seriously, which I alluded to before.
Oh, yeah.
We see a couple of companies getting into that space that weren't before. Zotac is getting in, and Gigabyte is actually going to... Aorus Gigabyte is actually going to start selling a 1070 graphics amp with a graphics card built in. And why that matters is, as we start to see more companies taking this space seriously, which right now there's only one real player in Razer, and then Alienware has a proprietary one, then you might live the dream of having your really thin notebook and then still being able to do VR and play games
when you get home.
You need a discrete graphics card for. So I think that's really an important development and really calls attention to the fact that when you buy a laptop these days, you really need Thunderbolt 3, and you better make sure it's the one that has 4-lane PCI, not 2-lane, so it has the bandwidth for one of these things, because that's going to become increasingly important, particularly as we see a new generation of mixed reality headsets from Microsoft and partners coming out toward the end of the year.
Yeah, this is cool for sure. I've always been a big fan of the idea of putting the graphics cards externally. That way, when you're traveling, you can go lightweight, and then when you get home, you get some serious oomph. Especially if you're a gamer, it makes a lot of sense to me. So that's exciting. So let's talk phones for a sec. Do you have a favorite phone?
At this very moment, the phone that I own is my favorite phone, and that's a Galaxy S8, which I just got last month.
That's right. You actually have a switching story. We can talk about that as well. But you got a Galaxy S8 regular size or plus?
I spent a long time debating it, and I ended up coming down the side of getting the regular S8. The S8 Plus is really nice too. Battery life is somewhere, depending on when we ran the test, between 45 minutes and an hour longer. But it seemed to me like it was a little bit big in my hand holding it all day.
Right.
And then I was getting a little worried that it was actually, like, I put my phone in my front pocket, and it was actually almost to the point of sticking out. And I was like, oh man, if this falls out on the train or the bus, I'm going to be in big trouble. And so, I kind of rolled the dice. Like, I'm not really sure which one I want to get, but I'll go with the one that's $100 cheaper. And it's turned out to be excellent. I'm really, really happy with my S8. It's turned out to be really the right size for my regular adult size hands because it's so long. And the battery life has been really a lot better than I expected. I came from having a phone that had like a double battery, and I was expecting to have a real downgrade of battery life.
Right.
But I'm using that phone all day long, and I come home at night and I have like 59%. So it's really good. I'm really happy with the battery life. I'm really happy with the camera. And I think the operating system is not too oppressive with the Android skin. It's just overall good, and I love the screen. I was really torn because part of me really wanted to get the Pixel because I love the idea of having...
Too late for that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I love the idea of having the pure Android experience. Not even because I like pure Android that much better than with a skin. I just like being in on the latest version. And so, with the Samsung, I can't install beta versions of the operating system. I have to wait until Samsung gets around to updating, which maybe never. So,
did you buy it unlocked or did you buy it on a carrier?
I bought it on the carrier because I'm too cheap to put down the whole $750. So this way I can pay for it every month. Otherwise, I would have bought it unlocked so that I could more easily root it. But even then, I'm sure that someone will come up with a root exploit for it. And maybe I'll try it if there's a compelling ROM out there for me to try. But it's not quite the same as being able to be on Google's beta program for sure.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But it's also a minor issue, to be honest with you. Even for myself, who's like, a diehard Nexus Pixel user in the sense that I want the latest, I don't find myself really even installing. Like right now, I could use Android O on my Pixel because I could download it. But I'm not going to do that because it is ultimately my daily driver, what I keep my entire life on. It needs to be reliable. I run my business from it. So, I end up basically not upgrading it until it's officially out, right? The OS. So, maybe I don't need a Pixel is basically what I'm saying. Although, very few phones have really tempted me away from a Nexus or Pixel over the years. There's been the occasional one. And I must say, I reviewed the Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus for Chip Check. That was one of them. It is a fantastic device. What made you pick that, say, over the G6 or some of the other kind of contemporary flagships that we have to choose from right now?
The camera.
Okay.
I waited because, at Tom's Guide, we review these things. And, I waited, I wanted to switch from Verizon to T-Mobile. And so I knew I needed to get a new phone. And I couldn't switch until I got a new phone because my old phone, which was really old, a Galaxy S3 to be, Note 3.
Oh my goodness.
Again, not S3, Note 3, a Galaxy Note 3
Note
to be
3.
exact. Still very old. Wouldn't make the transition, and my wife had a phone. Her phone would not make the transition either. She had an S5. Oof. So we've been waiting because we knew we wanted to make the switch to T-Mobile, and we're waiting for the right phone to come out. And so I got to borrow it and take it home. And first of all, I liked the screen a lot better than on the G6. It was real. The G6 is a really nice form factor, really nice size. I think even possibly a better overall size to hold than the S8, but it's hard to live without OLED when you've had OLED on the screen. And the other thing is that the camera is just a bit better. And one of my colleagues, Sam Rutherford, did a camera face-off between the G6 and between the Pixel and the S8. He did. We looked at pictures side by side, and clearly the S8 was the best. And I know I'm going to be taking this to trade shows. I'm going to be using it professionally even. So having the best camera available was my top priority.
So it's interesting because I also reviewed the G6 for Chip Chick. And in my opinion, the camera on the G6 is better than the Galaxy S8s. And I'm a huge camera phone person. I think in low light, they're very close. The Galaxy S8 might have a bit of an edge there. But in daylight, I think the G6 and the Galaxy S8 are indistinguishable. And for me, what makes the G6 camera superior is that there is a wide-angle camera. And so I can use it in situations I cannot use the Galaxy S8. And as a journalist, that's saved me several times now.
That's fair to say. I was more concerned about the low light because I feel like I never have enough light.
It's like splitting straws. Honestly, between the Pixel, the G6 and the Galaxy S8, it's almost indistinguishable how good these three are in low light. In my opinion, in some cases, you get a better result of the Galaxy S8 and the G6 versus the Pixel. But in some cases, the Pixel wins because it's got that fancy image processing. Where I think the Pixel loses is in when you have motion blur issues. Because you can't keep a steady hand because it doesn't have OIS. And even though there's a ton of software trickery, you can't always win. I'll give you an example. When I flew home from Taipei, I was flying with EVA Air in business class, and they have these fantastic brand new 777, 777 Boeings, and in business class, the ceiling of the plane inside the cabin has these this cool fiber optic sky. So when they flip the right switches, the sky, it basically looks like you're looking at night sky when you're in your seat, which is really amazing. And you get all these little like little pixel size holes in the ceiling with fiber optic running through it and lighting up like stars, and they're even like what's the word, like blinking a little bit just like stars would. And trying to take a photo of that try to do that during takeoff, just for to challenge myself, because there's a bit of turbulence until you get past 10,000 feet. Not enough turbulence to really make you move very much, but just enough that you can't really hold your phone perfectly steady. And the Galaxy S8 and the G6 absolutely nailed the shot. The Pixel, every other photo would have a slight motion blur on it that I could clearly see because of the lack of OIS. And so we're talking about, like, if we had seen these photos 2 years ago, we would have been like, this is mind-blowing. But today we're getting picky enough to say, well, in this particularly very rare subset situation, the Pixel falls apart because it doesn't have OS. But it's probably the only place it would fall apart. In some cases, it's much better than a Galaxy S8 in low light, just because of the crazy HDR plus trickery it does with multiple photo analysis and combining in software multiple photos to remove noise and stuff like that. So, but I appreciate your choice. I think the Galaxy S8 is a great choice, and I think you did the right thing. Obviously, for you, that seemed to be the best coming from a Samsung phone yourself. And more importantly, as you said, the OLED and all that. But it's interesting, right? Don't you think that we're getting to a place now where flagships are all pretty tremendous?
Yeah, also the other thing I forgot to mention is gigabit LTE.
Yeah, that's definitely going to come to T-Mobile very soon.
But I mean, I don't think the G6 supports
No, it does
that.
not support it because it doesn't have that X16 radio, because it doesn't have Snapdragon 835. You need an 835 for that. So
I'm future-proof there, and
for
that
the
also
6 months you're going to keep that phone. Right? No, you keep your phones 2 years. I guess you had a Galaxy S3 for how many years?
3 years. Yeah,
Note 3 years. That's not bad. It's a long time.
Yeah, it was a really long time. It's not like I want to keep a phone that long, but they're not giving them to me for free. So, I certainly want to try and hold on to it for a while. And so I definitely think that by the time gigabit LTE comes along on T-Mobile, I'll still have this phone. Yeah,
that's quite possible for sure. It's very exciting that they're deploying that. Actually, it's interesting that you made that decision as well because of gigabit LTE. You're the first person I've actually heard, I bought this phone for gigabit LTE. It's one of the reasons, but
that was definitely a factor to where I said I can't even consider the G6 or the Pixel because I want the faster speed. I mean, we're switching to T-Mobile because of the better speeds that we're getting on T-Mobile, not because it was cheaper.
How's that working out for you?
Good. It's been working out. It's been working out well. I'm happy. I mean, I can't say that it's blazing fast all the time.
No.
But it's much, much faster than Verizon was where I go.
And that's all that matters, right?
I can't speak for the whole country, but I can speak for where I go to work in Manhattan and where I live, the area where I live on Long Island now. And in my house, we get significantly better speeds on T-Mobile than we did on Verizon. And on Verizon, it had reached a point of being terrible.
Yeah, no, it is terrible currently on most places I go to on Verizon. Do you feel that you're saving money?
Oh yeah. Obviously it's about $50. It's about $20 a month less. And now I'm on unlimited. So before I was on limited, obviously I'm paying for the new devices that I could have stuck with the old, although really worn out devices for longer on Verizon. But yeah, I'm saving money overall for sure. That doesn't hurt. But really, we switched. I mean, there were some instances where we were so angry at Verizon.
You told me, yeah.
So, like in my wife is in the hospital and she couldn't make a phone call on Verizon, but people visiting with T-Mobile could. And so, and she visited her father in a different hospital, same story. So, a lot of instances where Verizon really didn't come through. So, that's why we switched. And if we're switching for the better bandwidth, well, then I better get a phone that takes advantage of all of the bandwidth.
See, if John Ledger is listening, I doubt he is, but maybe Dez is listening of T-Mobile. He's one of the evangelists over there. There you go. There's your T-Mobile ad. One last thing about your Switch. Did you enjoy your unlimited data roaming in Taipei?
Not that much because it was 2G. So as soon as I got there,
you got a local SIM.
I got a local
SIM. Me too, but I actually continued using my Pixel with my T-Mobile SIM. I got LTE, and it was throttled a little bit, but it was perfectly usable. I wasn't going to upload videos for work, but I was able to use it to do maps and to check Facebook and all that usual stuff,
I did not for the couple hours I was in the airport waiting for the SIM card store to open. My speed was not that great.
But it's only at the airport. Trust me. Once you got into town, it was fine. It really depends on which network you're roaming to. You know that you can choose your network you're roaming on when you're abroad.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. I mean, T-Mobile doesn't have agreement with everyone, but it'll give you a list if you go into the network settings, and you sometimes want to switch networks and see if you get better performance. Because basically when you land, it catches the first signal it catches of any tower, and if it has a roaming agreement, it stays on that, right?
Well,
but the wonderful thing about roaming is you can change carriers.
Interesting to know. I mean, I know that they say they throttle you to 2G unless you pay extra, and I looked up the cost of a data pass, and it was a lot. It's
actually not throttled to 2G. Most of the time, it's throttled to about a megabit. But you're not, and you generally will be on LTE. Like, you will actually be on LTE bands. Just they will slow you down a little bit, but it's not like unusable. I mean, it really depends, as I said, what roaming agreements have, what city you're in. Where was it that I always have really bad performance? There's one country that I've traveled to regularly where I'm like, damn it, T-Mobile, work out your roaming agreement. But some places are just like lightning fast. Hong Kong is a place where it's really slow. That's what it is. But let's switch to. We talked about flagships. I want to give my listeners a quick updates on my flagship situation. Since I have all the phones all the time. I just received an HTC U11 today. And by the time you listen to this podcast, you will be able to watch my unboxing video on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. And I'm reviewing this phone for Chip Chick. So in a few days, in about a week or so, I will have a review of the HTC U11. This is a Sprint model, not the unlocked unit. So just so you know. And then I got my G6 fixed in Taiwan. This is an ongoing saga, Avram. My G6 review unit is a one-off handmade US spec device that is in a color that's not available in the US, white and gold. And it was given to me by Ken, the head of LG Global PR at MWC, as my official review unit. And I had a very unexpected and unexplainable cracking of the rear screen happen on it. Rear glass. After 3 months of use, without any doings of ill on my behalf.
Doings of ill.
Without like sitting on it, stepping on it, dropping it. The back was cracked. And so I asked them, hey, can you send me another one? I said, well, we only had like a dozen of those that we gave out to US media because they're a US model with all the US guts, including wireless charging, which is unique to the G6 in the US. But it's in a shell made for, a Korean phone because the white and gold is only sold in certain parts of the world. And so we can't do anything about it. I mean, they said we'd be happy to send you like a US spec unit, but it won't be that color. And they did send me a silver and blue one, but my white and gold is like my unicorn. So I decided, the US repair situation for phone repair shops is kind of dodgy, and also the parts are expensive. So I figured, why if I go to Taiwan to one of those little basement computer market type places and get it fixed, which is exactly what I did. The part I bought on eBay before flying out because I wasn't sure if Taiwan also had that color choice. So I bought it on eBay for $9. It arrived just the day before I flew to Taiwan. And then it cost me, are you ready for this, Avram? $11 for a guy to do it in half an hour.
Wow.
$20 and my G6 is as good as new.
It's almost worth the price of the flight.
Exactly, but I didn't pay for the flight, so haha.
So even better.
And I got it done in Taiwan, so I know it's done right. Everything works like a charm. That's an update on the G6 I wanted everybody to know. And then in terms of phones, as you know from last week's podcast, I've been playing with the Key One from BlackBerry, and I really like it. Have you had a chance to play with that, Avram?
I saw it a little bit. I haven't gotten to spend a lot of time with it. Obviously, I touched the keyboard. It seemed pretty good. I'm one who still misses the physical keyboard, so
you should really try out this phone. It's a really great phone. I mean, I'm not a hardware keyboard person. I would probably still not buy this phone as my daily driver, but I have to admit that this is the best case for a hardware keyboard phone ever yet to me on Android. So, and if you're a former BlackBerry user, there's absolutely a no-brainer if you love the hardware keyboard that you should buy that phone.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it for a second there because I really am a fan of, I mean, I was the last person on earth probably to switch off of hardware keyboards. Well, maybe not the last person since somebody still buys BlackBerry, but, Did you
have one of those Moto sliders or
yes,
HTC
I did.
sliders? Yeah, you did.
I had the original Droid, and then when everybody else was switching to touchscreen only phones, I got this horrible phone called the Samsung Stratosphere.
Oh, I do remember that horrible phone.
That thing was a piece of garbage. And I bought it without anyone having reviewed it or anything because it was a 4G LTE slider and I wanted the keyboard. That thing was a horror show. It used to randomly reboot itself in the middle of phone calls and things like that. It was slow. It was terrible, but it had my keyboard. And then finally, I just had to give it up. What can you say? Sometimes the most convenient technology doesn't win. That's why we're all still tying our shoes and not using Velcro. That's why we don't have hardware keyboards.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but this is definitely a good case to be made for it. I want to talk about a couple of devices that I've been playing with that are kind of phone peripherals. And Avram, I'm going to ask you for your take on what I'm going to describe to you. Because you're a tech savvy guy and as a tech journalist, you get to play with different things. So I think immediately you'll have a good opinion of some kind, whether I agree or not. The first device I want to talk to is made by FLIR. I don't know if you're familiar with FLIR.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm familiar with FLIR.
So I just got their embargo lifted today, in fact. I just got their FLIR ONE Pro camera, which is a camera that attaches to your Android or iOS device, like the previous generation. But this is a much higher resolution product. And it's also a ruggedized product for pros, basically contractors, folks like that. It's pretty pricey, I think $300 something, maybe $350. But the thermal resolution is twice as good as the previous generation. And they gave it to me under embargo to play with. I played with it. The one I have the Android version. And I was suitably impressed. I had the original for Android and iOS both. It was okay, but it was not something I would carry around every day. This one is good enough now that I think I might potentially, and also I should add, comes in a very convenient, very small, hard carrying case that I would probably just leave it in my bag. And if I want a thermal imaging camera, I've got one. Have you ever used one?
Yes, I have. Do
you have one?
I've used the competitor to FLIR. What's the name of it again? Wow, I have poor memory.
Know.
I've used the main competitor to FLIR, and I liked it.
What have you used it for?
Well, I got one to test, and I was playing with it. The thing I would like to do with it is kind of a corner case for sure, but all of the testing that we do and benchmarking of laptops and other computers, and you want to see which part is getting hot.
Right. That's a good use case for you.
You know, now the one that I got was fairly low res. I think it was like 320 by 240 or something like that. So having a higher resolution where you could get more detail and see more closely which part of a device is getting hot is very appealing. I think obviously that's just my use case, but I know people who are trying to do insulation in a house would want to use it. It's obviously a lot of fun to take outside at night and kind of do a night vision type of thing and see what animals or people are lighting it up. So I love that kind of thing. I love that peripheral. I think that's great, and seeing it go up into a higher resolution, because I think that was an issue with earlier models. You're not able to get like a really good high res image. Is great. I'd love to play with one of those.
You should ping the folks at FLIR. I can put you in touch if you want.
I think we may actually have it in the office, and I just don't know about it, because I saw a FLIR device on Sam's desk at work today. So I think that I think that's
probably it. Yeah. The bottom line for me is that it's better than the predecessor. I like the looks of it better. I like the fact that it's USB Type C. So the Android version now, so it's interchangeable. You can easily swap it from facing the front or facing the rear by just flipping it over, just like the Lightning version for iOS is or was in the previous generation as well. It does come with USB Type C input for charging, because it has a little battery in it. That doesn't drain your phone completely really quickly. And that's also cool to see them adopt USB Type C for charging. Because a lot of accessories for phones will skimp out and use micro USB despite the fact that they're USB-C accessories or Lightning accessories, and I really, really hate that. What else is cool about it? Overall, rugged, good quality. The software has improved drastically. There's a lot more you can do with the software. But if you want to find out more, here's what I suggest you do. Go to my YouTube channel, and for that, you just Google my name and YouTube, and you'll find it. And you'll find my quick 15-minute video review of the product. I did have one issue where I dropped my phone with the FLIR camera attached to it, plugged into the the USB-C port, and it did bend the connector on the FLIR a little bit. I had to bend it back, so it is ruggedized, but I'm worried that if that happens too often, you will end up damaging the connector. I dropped it from not very high onto a hardwood floor, so it's not like it got scuffed or anything. And the connector on my phone, the charging port is just fine. Just that the USB-C, part on the FLIR camera itself bent a little bit, and I had to unbend it. So that was my only negative experience with it, and it ironically happened as I was setting up to record my review video. Isn't it always like that, Avram? Right?
Usually it's after we review it that it breaks.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes for me it's just like as I review it. The second product I want to talk about is called Prynt Pocket, and Prynt with a Y, Prynt. Now, I don't know if you know this one, Avram, but it's cool. It is a zero ink basically printer for your iPhone, so you can print photos with it. Your phone docks into this what looks like a camera grip, basically, with a shutter key and a zoom button on it, and it has its own battery and its own battery charging connector, which, by the way, is micro USB, despite the fact that this is a Lightning connector accessory. And so the phone kind of docks onto this grip. It accepts any size iPhone. It's adjustable, including phones with cases installed. And it transforms your phone into a more grippable camera, but at the same time lets you print. Right there in the grip is a tiny little zero ink printer. Zero ink is a technology that allows you to print like Polaroid, but it's digital, and the ink is contained in each sheet of paper. It costs $1 a sheet. You can get refills directly from the Prynt app. But printing isn't really that big of a gimmick anymore. What this thing does, it's really cool, is that when you record, like when you take a photo with their app instead of the phone app, it also records a little bit of video alongside it, just like the camera app does on iPhone. But again, not all phones other than iPhones support that feature. So the Prynt app will do this little bit of video recording to match, and then they somehow embed some invisible data in the photo that you print. And if you mail that physical photo or give it physically to a friend, and they install the Prynt app on their phone, they don't have to own the printer. They can see the video AR style by like pointing the camera of their phone to the printed photo, and the printed photo will animate on their phone. Do you know what I'm saying?
Wow, that's cool.
It's really cool. And so it's basically like Harry Potter pictures come to life but you look at them through your phone with AR. And the beauty of it is anybody can download the Prynt app from, again, PRYNT app from Android, Google Play Store, and or iOS. Now, they will make a version of this Prynt Pocket accessory for Android soon with a USB Type-C connector, I would presume. But the current version just came out a week ago or so, has only Lightning support for iOS. They feel that the iPhone users are more likely to buy this accessory. Now, I want to give a quick disclaimer. I worked with them to help them with their crowdfunding 2 years ago for the original product. This is the Generation 2 product. There was no crowdfunding for this Generation 2. You can buy it today and have it shipped today. But I want you to know that even though I have had nothing to do with the company in 2 years, and they sent me a review in it because obviously I'm a journalist and I have had nothing to do with them for 2 years, I did work with them very briefly for crowdfunding 2 years ago. The original product was a large case that your phone fit into, and it had these adapters for all the different size flagships available at the time. And it was very clunky and very thick and very big. So this thing is turned into basically just a camera grip now. And it's much sexier. It's still a little bulky, but it is a full-on photo printer in there. So it's cool. Would you use something like that? Is this something you think is cool?
Yeah, absolutely I would. I mean, I'd like to see it be... I think it would be cool if it were they gave you a wireless option so that you could use it with anything without having to worry about, is it compatible with my, with the connector on my phone.
But then you lose the cool AR Harry Potter video feature embedded thing. Right? I mean, I suppose that's their shtick. Because in case you are actually interested in this, Avram, that's actually a very good point you make. LG, the phone maker, has a zero-ink printer that's Bluetooth, that's pocketable, that runs on a rechargeable battery, that works with any printer, any phone, any laptop, as long as you have Bluetooth printing support.
Yeah, I think
it's the same print engine. Zinc, Zero Ink is the same company that made the engine for printing, right? They supply the mechanism for this technology to anyone who wants it. And they're a Korean-based company, so LG was the first to use their services. I actually have LG's little printer. I got it like 5 years ago when I was in Korea visiting. And it's cool, but it just prints. It doesn't really do anything else, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool too that they're adding the AR aspect to it. Obviously, you have to get people to know. You have to, when you give someone the picture, you have to say, hey, download this app, and then they kind of have to get in the habit of doing it. So I think there's a adoption curve right there. But, once people do it, it's cool. And if they don't do it,
it says it on the back of the photo, like the little adhesive that you can peel off, because they're all, each of them is a sticker. And the photos are about like 2 inches by 3 inches, or 1 3/4 by 3 inches. They're not tiny. It says on the back, download the Prynt app, and gives you the URL or whatever. But it's cool. I think it's cool, and I enjoyed it. It's fun at parties. I had it with me at Computex. We were hanging out with some of the journalists one night, and a lot of photos were printed, and the goofiness happened. So, yeah. And of course, you have to have the photo to see it. I mean, obviously, I can see them on my own app because they're my photos, but you'd have to actually get your hands on the printed copy to be able to see the animation. If you ran into one, if you ever see one of those, you know what it is now. We should probably wrap it up. It's been over an hour. Any final thoughts on the state of computing in 2017, in mid-2017, Avram?
Well, it's good to see that there's some more innovation happening with new technologies. We're not just getting lighter and fast, a little bit lighter and a little bit faster and a little bit longer lasting. We're actually seeing new things develop. And I'm very, very hopeful that we'll finally start to see VR get a little bit more mainstream in the second half of this year, particularly with what Microsoft is doing and with more things getting the graphics power. We're probably still a year or two away from everybody running really good VR all the time. But every time I get the chance to play with a Vive, which I did at Computex briefly because I don't own one, I'm just still blown away again like it was the first time. And I say, man, why isn't everybody doing this all the time?
So you're a big VR fan.
I am of good VR.
Yeah, good VR is amazing. It's true.
Of sticking a phone in front of your face like you're just shoving it in front of your face, I'm not such a big fan of that. Or of like blurry stuff like we were getting on some of the Acer headsets I tried out. But when you use like the top of the line, like a Vive, and you're walking around, particularly when you get to do the wireless demo, which I did, wow. You know, like, that's awesome.
That sounds cool. I did not do that demo. Now I'm jealous. Listen, Avram, thanks for being on the show. Do you want to pimp your blog, your publication, your YouTube channel, your hobby, whatever you do?
Oh, yes, all of it. So please, if you want to read some of the things that I've written or my colleagues have written, check us out on laptopmag.com, where we have everything about laptops and tablets, or tomsguide.com, where we have stuff about every other type of electronic. So check us out there.
Any Twitter handle people should follow you at? Are you a Twitterer?
Yes. To an extent. I have my Twitter handle, at Geek in Chief, where you can follow me. And I'll also just throw it out there briefly that if any of you are running Chrome and you don't like auto playing sounds, I have a Chrome extension I've written called Silent Sight that you may want to check out. Since we're pimping things.
Yeah, you should pimp things. Absolutely. I had no idea you're a developer. That's freaking awesome. You can
12,000 users.
Well, that's the start. Yep. You can find me on Twitter at Tankgirl, TNKGRL. Think of the comic book character Tankgirl. Drop the vowels, and that's who I am online in most places. My YouTube channel, you can be found by Googling my full name, Miriam Joire. That's MYRIAM JOIRE. And Google that on YouTube, and you'll find me. It's probably easier than giving you a shortcut URL. You can also go to my Twitter profile to get to my YouTube. And of course, the podcast is published every week, about midweek. So subscribe. The way to subscribe, if you're running into this completely by accident, is go to mobiletechpodcast.com and you'll find all the information, that RSS feed, etc. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Pocket Casts if you look as well. And that's it. Keep an eye out. I will be publishing my U11 review in the next week sometime, hopefully, if I manage to get it all together. And yes, I do write phone reviews with Chip Chick. And if you want to find out more about the Snapdragon 835 and Windows 10 we talked about, go read my story on mobilegeeks.com. That's mobilegeeks.com. Avram, thanks so much for joining me. That was fantastic.
An honor and a pleasure.
All right. We'll have you again sometime. And for now, goodbye, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.